Well, greetings and welcome. It's Take Two with Jerry and Debbie and you on EWTN Radio. I am Jerry Usher along with Debbie Georgiani, the show team in place. So much support we get to put this show on the air every day. We're grateful to Ace, Jeff, and Matt, and we're grateful to you, the Take Two family, because you always take the topic and run with it, and we get off the air and we say, wow, the Take Two family was amazing again today. So, Debbie, we have, I think, a topic that a lot of people are going to resonate with, although as we were talking before the show off the air, maybe it's something that's out of a lot of people's minds nowadays.
I agree, Jerry. And it's actually one of my favorites. You know this, Jerry. It's a practice that I have incorporated in my spiritual life. And we're asking today, and this is perfect timing for Lent, folks. So we're going to have kind of a challenge at the end of this discussion for you all to participate in your homes and the areas where you live. Who do you still visit at the cemetery? Or do you even visit a cemetery? Do you ever go by a cemetery, especially if it's a Catholic cemetery? Do you make the sign of the cross because the chapel is there, and so many things are, beautiful, wonderful things are happening with the Christians that are buried there, and that is, they've lived a long life, they're laid to rest. And it's our job as the church militant, it's our job that we are still here to pray for those souls in purgatory. We can never really assume that everybody's in heaven, right? We have to really know that all souls need that assistance. And if they don't, if they're in heaven, it'll be applied to somebody else. So there's a whole practice around visiting the cemetery, but we want to ask you the question, who do you still visit at the cemetery? Please call in and share with us your practice, and I'll share Marty and I have a very unique practice of visiting cemeteries. So here is the number, 833-288-3986. And it's not morbid, folks. This is an important topic.
Well, it's not morbid, and it's actually a beautiful way to pay your respects to those who have passed away, those who have gone before us, because one day we're going to be right beside them in the ground like that, somewhere anyway. So again, do you have a loved one, a relative, a family member, a friend, maybe a teacher, someone who is dear to your life that you go to visit at the cemetery? Not the seminary, but the cemetery. Sometimes the wrong word slips out.
Right.
833-288-3986. Maybe you go on an anniversary. I just got a text about a month ago on February 7th from my brother-in-law, Larry, who went to my sister Mary's gravesite in Seattle. Aww. And I've been there many times. I know where most of my family are buried, including my late uncle, the priest, Father Harold Thiel. And it's just a little bit weird for me, to me, Debbie, is you walking around looking for the different tombstones you're looking for, and you're kind of walking on the ground, and I feel like, should I be walking on this? It's almost like you get this kind of uncomfortable. Yeah. You want? I don't know. I guess it's not.
No, but I tiptoe sometimes when they're buried and it's very close together and they're kind of packed into the cemetery grounds. I feel very nervous. I kind of tiptoe in between, the headstones for that exact reason, just as a respect to those that have lived. I mean, these are people that had great stories, lived great lives, contributed, fantastically to this world. So many of them went through suffering, and, there are grandparents and great-grandparents and aunts and uncles and even so many children are buried at cemeteries. It is really, truly an amazing spiritual pilgrimage. I know that sounds strange, folks, but Marty and I are we're so devoted to visiting cemeteries. We absolutely love it. We walk the grounds, pray the rosary. We look at all the names. We see you can kind of, especially if you know somebody, even if you worked with them or they were in ministry or a fellow parishioner, you start to think about their great life. And at the cemetery near where I live, Jerry, there's a whole row of all the priests all together.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Yeah. And it's amazing, Jerry. Out of the group of priests I worked under, 4 of them. And so I think back on all the times I was like, oh, Father, remember how many times I was in your office, crying about this ministry or doing something. It's just beautiful to remember the lives that have lived and now are laid to rest, and the respect as Catholic Christians that we can provide them through prayer and through our time. Because if we go visit them, you just have to imagine that the good Lord is delighting in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Indeed. All right, a couple lines are taken right now, but that leaves a few open at 833-288-3986. 833-288-3986, talking about visiting cemeteries. Do you have any routines? Do you go on anniversaries? Maybe a little bit of a twist on this would be, are you all set with your own cemetery plot already? A lot of people let those things go by. When my sister got a sudden cancer diagnosis and was dead in 3 months, they had none of that planned. So maybe if you want to share your wisdom on preparing for your own burial site, again, Debbie said it's not really morbid. It's going to happen to every one of us, and we should try to be prepared. So 833-288-3986. Email is take2@ewtn.com. Social media, YouTube and Facebook. You can post your comments there.
Hi,
Jeff
guys.
will get those to us. And you can also post on the website for the show at take2show.com.
So we're asking the question today, who do you still visit at the cemetery? Or do you even go and visit a cemetery during, holidays even? Or maybe we were talking with Ace McKay, like in his family tradition, they used to get together once a year and they would, gather together, tell stories of beautiful stories of the people that lived, their relatives. That's a beautiful tradition. And I still see that happening at cemeteries, just to let you know. So that's wonderful. I have to tell you something kind of funny, a little bit / creepy. My sister has a crypt in the mausoleum where I live, and Marty and I have the one next to my parents. But every other crypt pretty much is filled. So there's only the 2 blank spaces. So every time we go and visit my mom and dad, it's reminded that these are our 2 spaces that are still blank. So it's
You're going to move there someday, is what you're saying.
Oh, yeah. Well, our retirement home is paid for. Yeah. We invested in it many years ago.
Well, look, Ann is up first in a couple minutes. Then we have Joan and Christina, but some phone lines are still open. 833-288-3986. Do you have a practice of visiting anybody at the cemetery? Actually, it doesn't even have to be your loved ones. It's a beautiful, pious practice. If you drive by a cemetery, to make the sign of the cross, say a prayer for those who are buried there, or even go into the cemetery and walk around and pray for them. Debbie, I grew up across the street from a cemetery in Seattle.
Wow.
It was really kind of a little bit, unnerving as a kid, but it was also kind of cool because we used to pray for the people over there in the cemetery all the time. So.
Wow.
All right, grab that one of those open phone lines there. We are going to go right to your calls in a minute. 833-288-3986. Visiting cemeteries and your experience with that.
Hello, this is Janet Morana of Priests for Life with Pro-Life Update. In Matthew's Gospel, we read that when Jesus died, there was an earthquake. In the Old Testament scriptures, the earthquake was one of the signs of the day of the Lord, when God's power and glory and presence would be manifest in human history. This is what happened at the death of Christ, because at that moment, death itself was done away with. The Lord went among the dead to rescue them and to open for them and for us the kingdom of life. Things change at that point for human history and the destiny of the human family. And it is the foundation of who we are as a pro-life people. Our stand against abortion is not just political. It is rooted in the death and resurrection of Christ. This is Janet Morana on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
Save the date. Saturday, August 26th is the day, and Birmingham, Alabama is the place for the 2023 EWTN Family Celebration. We're celebrating Mother Angelica's love for the Eucharist, and join us to mark the centennial year of Mother's birth. Make your plans now to attend this free event. More details coming soon at our Family Celebration webpage, EWTN.com/Family Celebration.
One open phone line here on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie, so please pick that up if you, that open phone line, if you feel prompted by the Spirit to weigh in on this conversation about visiting cemeteries. 833-288-3986. And you can also weigh in if you just don't like cemeteries for whatever reason, maybe too many scary movies, stuff like that, and we can talk about it because it's really a beautiful experience. So call us. Before we go to the phones, Jerry, if I can just share about Catholic News Agency and the emails associated with CNA, which I love. As you know, Jerry, I say it every single time we do the show. You can rely on CNA to cover the mission and activities of the Catholic Church, including social, political, moral, and cultural issues from a perspective of faith. For the latest Catholic news, visit CatholicNewsAgency.com. It's an online service from EWTN News. And here's the cool part. You can get timely news updates directly to your email inbox. And all you have to do is visit EWTN.com and click on subscribe.
All right. That last phone line was just taken, so you can still try to get through because we have this little queue. We call it kind of a green room. So if you get through, you'll be there until a line is freed, and you can come right on in and join the conversation at 833-288-3986. Our first stop is Buffalo, New York. Ann is there listening on the Station of the Cross. Hi, Ann.
Hi. I just am calling to, give some advice. I guess it's our Catholic duty to pray for the dead, and if I go by the cemetery, I might do a sign of the cross or say a couple prayers. We have a holy priest that lived in our area many years ago, Father Nelson Baker, and he used to be buried in the cemetery near the OLV Basilica, and I went there to pray for a very difficult legal situation for a friend of ours, and nothing was helping, and there was a prayer there. I prayed it, and within a week, the problem was resolved, and it was amazing. They did move Father Baker into the church, and he's beatified. And so I went to pray for my goddaughter, Meg, who's special needs, and she's having seizures. And I just, put my hand on top of the, where he's reposed, and I just felt this jolt. It didn't hurt, but it kind of, surprised me. And I talked to the priest, and he said, let's pray for Meg. And shortly after that, she was, she got through one of her tough spells, but she's going through a lot of crisis right now and different medications and whatnot. And so I also went for myself because I have a very serious leg problem that's incurable and asking help as well. So anyway, I just wanted to say that, God is there, the saints are there, and they're helping us, so don't hesitate to ask their intercession. Father Baker lived during the Depression, and he helped so many people and so many orphans, and they called him Padre of the Poor.
Beautiful, yeah. I've been there, and I think it's Our Lady of Victory Basilica. Is
Correct.
that correct? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I've been there to pray to Father Baker as well, and I prayed to him a lot of other times outside of that as well. But yeah, you mentioned the beautiful practice of praying for the dead. This really isn't optional for us as Christians. It's one of the spiritual works of mercy, along with the first one, counseling the doubtful, instructing the ignorant, admonishing the sinner, comforting the sorrowful, forgiving injuries, bearing wrongs patiently. And of course, the USCCB website says prayer is one of those most powerful ways we can support others, joining together in prayer for the living and the dead, and trusts us all into God's care. So, Debbie, it's really not, we shouldn't look at it as optional. We should probably pray for the dead every single day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And a couple things. I just wanted to let you know, I added Meg to, and I added you as well for your intentions. I added you to the prayer book. And I saw it was yesterday. I think you had a really big fire in Buffalo and lost one of the firefighters.
Yes.
You're not near the fire, are you?
No, it was downtown. I did see it on the news last night.
Okay.
And I guess it was a four alarm fire, and it was a lot of firemen there.
Yeah, we're praying for everyone. That's really tough. And so, but we put everybody in the book. Thank you so much for reminding us and sharing with us. And this is why we do shows like this, so that people, engage again. They become active in asking the saints and holy men and women of God that have gone before us, to really help us and to intercede. We need the assistance, and God knows that. That's why God created the angels, right, to give us that heavenly assistance, and everything works together in cooperation. So, Anne, we're right with you. Thank you so much, and keep us posted. I'm personally going to ask my go-to saints for your intentions, because I want you to be, in full healing, and Meg as well. Okay, could you keep us updated?
I certainly will. And can I just add one thing? My mom was from Lackawanna. She's, long gone. But when she was 5 years old, she gave a bouquet of flowers to Father Baker when he was alive.
Wow.
Oh.
What a great gift.
Oh,
Yep.
wow. What was
Yeah.
your mom's name, Ann?
Josephine.
Josephine. Oh, beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah, we'll be
Wow.
praying for her, and as Debbie said, you and all of your intentions. And Meg, and thank you for joining us on this conversations about visiting cemeteries today on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. Our friend Timoteo, watching on YouTube along with a
Hi,
lot of other
Tim.
people. Get this, Timoteo says, this is indeed a God incident. This topic today comes on the very day of my mother's passing, 12:29 p.m. on March 2nd, 2012.
Yeah.
Is that the Holy Spirit or what?
Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But you know what? My takeaway on that with Timoteo and with Anne. Look at the connection. You know, her mom Josephine gave flowers to Father Baker, right? You know, I mean, look at the connection, folks. Everything is it's like a tapestry. It's all being planned out and woven together. It's really quite amazing. And the more we stay aware and the more we have conversations like this, it just makes us come alive fully, I think. So I love this. That's why I love this show so very much. Okay, let's go move to Texas. Joan in Dallas, Texas on Guadalupe Radio Network. Hello, Joan.
Hello.
How are you?
Great subject today. And it brought to mind something that I read in the diary of Sister Faustina. She was once visiting a cemetery, and she was praying for all the holy souls, and she, at one point, asked the question, "Are you happy?" And she said there was a unison reply, and she heard it in her spirit, that we are our happiness is to the degree that we performed or did the will of God in our lives. And that has always just stuck with me so much. And yes, and I do love to visit the cemetery, and I'm fortunate to have great-grandparents, grandparents, parents, all in the same cemetery. So when I make a visit, I take them all in.
You're blessed.
Yeah, well, we know from Scripture it says, in your will is our peace. So the more that we can do the will of God in this life, we're going to be exponentially happier in heaven. And it's not always easy to do the will of God, but we can discover what that is through prayer, discernment, spiritual direction, and of course, listening to the words of St. Faustina, very, very inspiring. That the fact the whole diary is just amazing.
Oh yeah, I know it's a cliche, but it's a spiritual game changer. The Diary of Saint Faustina. Joan, you have a very powerful name. That's my sister's name. Have you noticed lately all over social media? There's a everybody's getting back with the story of Saint Joan of Arc, saying it's in our time right now. This whole idea of leaning on Saint Joan of Arc. Have you been up on that lately? That's been happening all over social media.
I'm not aware of that, but it certainly makes sense because we are in a battle.
Yeah, and a lot of people are going to your patron saint, so you're very blessed.
Oh, I am very blessed. Thank you so much, and I love your show. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Joan. Thank you very much. Her name means God is gracious, actually.
God is gracious.
I love looking into the etymology of names.
Me too.
Don't you? Yeah.
Oh yeah, me too. Totally. That's so me. I have to look at the background, the definition, where it came from, what it means. Well, the names are very important to God.
Yeah, absolutely. He changed a lot of names in Scripture to make them more significant. Okay, we're talking about your experiences visiting cemeteries or a cemetery, 833-288-3986. How do you honor your loved ones, your family? Maybe you just like to go and pray for all of the souls of those who are buried there. 833-288-3986. Another Guadalupe radio listener, Christina in Dallas today. Hi, Christina.
Hi, I'm so glad you brought up this topic because it reminded me of something I'd forgotten. A dear friend who moved away 10 years ago from Texas to Minnesota, and a couple years after that, a friend of hers, she went to a different parish than I did, passed away. So she came back for the funeral, and she called me up, and I attended also. We went to the cemetery afterwards. And after everybody had left, she and I just wandered among the graves, and she showed me the graves of all of her friends who had passed away, her oldest child who had committed suicide in college. He was in deep mental anguish, and so many others. And we just prayed at every grave. And actually, it was such a blessing. It wasn't morbid. It wasn't maudlin. We were enjoying each other's company. It was a beautiful spring day, and it was a great day of fellowship with her there in the cemetery. And I think we were there 1 or 2 hours. well, it's not necessarily a cemetery story, is my grandmother. She lived in Europe all her life. She was not American, and she seemed to have rejected God all her life, and she'd had an abortion. My mom was her only living child, and only because she was so young at the time, she didn't know where to get an abortion. And she just seemed so bitter for the next 50 years. And I kept praying for her for years and years before she died. And that's why after she died, we found out that she'd had an abortion. And I said, that's the reason. So I've been praying for her soul ever since. And I'd asked my mom, her only living child, if she'd ever prayed for her, and she said no. She was so mean and nasty. I never prayed for my mother. And I thought, oh, my goodness. Okay. So, I thought, well, at least I can pray for her. And I just, it's really been a blessing to think that at least somebody is praying for her, because that whole side of the family over in Europe, they don't go to church. They don't pray.
Well, what you're doing is a beautiful act of charity and talk about graciousness. You are providing that for your family line, and it is a ministry. Jerry just wrote, it's a ministry. Absolutely, praying for the souls that have passed. That's a much needed ministry and effort, because we know that we do a lot of work with Adam Bly, religious demonologist, and he said that a lot of times souls will make themselves known that they need prayers for that reason. And so they're desperate for the prayers because they need our help. They have to have our help. And so, Christina, you've stepped into that role for your family line. That's huge. It's huge for you. It's huge for your grandmother. It's huge for your mother. But here's the other thing too that is so powerful. Maybe say have some masses said for your grandmother, because a lot of the souls that are trying to make themselves known that they need help right away, the masses are key. And even they were saying that even 1 or 2 masses will help release that soul. So you're in the right line of work. You stepped in and you're helping your whole entire family. You won't see it probably here, but you're going to see it on the other side. So what do you think?
Thank you for that great reminder, because she died almost 30 years ago, and I'm sure I had some masses said for her at the beginning, but yes, I've really forgotten totally about that in these past few years, so thank you for that reminder.
Yeah, and one more thing, you were talking about your friend visiting, and you were visiting the cemetery, and you were walking around, and you spent 1 or 2 hours. The same exact thing happened with my sister and myself when we were visiting my mom and dad. The same thing. Beautiful day, walking around. We got lost in the time when it flew by. It was so peaceful. It was a mini pilgrimage. So I'm right with you, Christina. What do you think, Jer?
When you said the ministry, you talked about it's kind of, Christina's kind of inherited this role, this beautiful purpose and plan from God. I had the same thing. I wrote down, you've been called by God to pray for your grandmother and your family. And that is it's a lovely obligation, but it's also a blessed one as well, Christina, as I'm sure you know. And as we know, God is outside of time and space. The book of Hebrews talks about Jesus' once for all sacrifice. We represent that at the Mass, but it's the one sacrifice that is outside of time and space. That's how people of the Old Testament are saved, by the sacrifice of Christ. How is that? Because it stands outside of time and space. So our prayers can go back and win forgiveness for others, even prior to their death, or you need conversion or whatever. So it's a lesson for all of us, Debbie and Christina. I think we need to pray for the souls of those who have died. Now, I make a practice of praying for notorious bad guys, Stalin and, all these people. I pray for Hitler. I pray for them. They are not outside the scope of God's salvation, since he's outside of time and space.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Christina?
Went a little long that time.
just beautiful. I really, really appreciate that. And I hope more people listening to this will go and visit a cemetery and enjoy their day there. I mean, offer prayers and with a friend and enjoy the fellowship, because you're away from everything else. Turn off your cell phone and have fellowship with each other and fellowship with God.
Absolutely. I'm right with you. Boy, if we lived in the same town, we would visit those cemeteries together. It's so peaceful. I so agree. Christina's spot on, Jerry.
Absolutely. Thanks, Christina. Have a wonderful, beautiful day. Hope your Lent is going well. 833-288-3986. It is your your show, I should say, Take Two with Jerry and Debbie and you on EWTN Radio. And today our topic is, do you have a practice of visiting the cemetery for anyone? It could be a loved one, a family member, a parent, a sibling, a child. Do you have it? You go on anniversaries. What do you do when you're there? Do you bring flowers? Do you bring some other things? Do you pray walking through the cemetery? 833-288-3986. We'll get back to the phones in a minute. We have a little bit of social media, Debbie, if we want to get to those for a minute.
Yes. Do you want to go first? Why don't you go first?
No, Ace went first with the music.
Oh, there you go. Okay, so we'll hit the pause button when we come back. More social media and more calls?
Pam and King and Alex and more calls too, 833-288-3986. We love doing the show with you every day, and you're making it another beautiful, impactful conversation today on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
Join Archbishop Jose Gomez in sharing the good news.
In the Transfiguration, we meet him. We meet God. Jesus is revealed as the light of God, the glory of God. In his face, we can see the face of God. And in his eyes, we can see the mystery of God's love for us. The Transfiguration is a beautiful moment in history when God reveals his face. And Jesus teaches us to see the face of God in the people we meet in the world, because we are all made in the image of God. As we continue on our Lenten journey, let us try to pray more. Let us try to really seek the face of God when we pray, and seek to serve God in our brothers and sisters, especially those most in need.
Visit lacatholics.org to find ways to connect with our faith community in the Archdiocese of Los Angeles.
Want to be notified when Take Two with Jerry and Debbie goes live on Facebook? Follow EWTN Radio's Facebook page and click on the bell icon to be notified.
On the next Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo.
We do our very best at Catholic Connection to keep you connected to the Church with interviews on issues that matter, issues that impact our everyday lives as Catholics in the world, but not of the world. Whether it's featuring the latest from the front lines of the pro-life movement or the culture war that continues to rage around us, we will give you the tools to help you stay faithful as well as make a difference.
Catholic Connection, weekday mornings at 9 a.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio.
Hi, this is Dr. David Anders. Do you have questions about the Catholic faith? Get the answers on Call to Communion, coming up at 2 p.m. Eastern. Now, back to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
We're going to get to more of your calls. We have social media to get to. A lot of comments, contributions to our conversation today coming in about visiting those in the cemetery. We'll get right back to that after I tell you about Conversations with Consequences. That is a weekly radio show of the Catholic Association, and it features conversations about the topics that matter to an educated and well-formed Catholic audience. And this, by the way, it airs Saturdays at 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio. And this week the guests are Louis Brown of CMF Curo, that is Christus Medicus, I hope I say that right, Christus Medicus Foundation. And also, let me get back to that, and also Talking Love and Marriage with the Herbecks, Peter Herbeck and his wife. So Catholic Conversations with Consequences, 2 times on Saturday, 7 a.m., 5 p.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio.
Okay, so Pam on YouTube, hi Pam, we're waving to you, says, unfortunately, I've not visited a family member in many years. None are near to me, but I do visit some cemeteries. We have St. Michael's in downtown Pensacola. That's Florida, a beautiful sacred experience. I so agree, Pam, but I want to give you a tip that I learned from a priest. I was sharing with Jerry and Ace on the break, and this is for everyone if you wanted to do this. Everybody's moved, let's face it. So many people moved out of their hometowns. They've moved, their grandparents, their aunts and uncles are buried somewhere else across the country or something of that nature. Ask one of your family members to go to that cemetery and take pictures of their headstones. Okay. And then bring and have those pictures in your prayer book or in front of you or your prayer space or your prayer table. Have those pictures there because again, like Jerry was saying, God stands outside of space and time. And so if we moved away, you can still you can still have that remembrance and bring yourself back to that cemetery that might be hundreds of miles away. So I would suggest the same thing for you and Mary. I don't know if you have Mary's picture of her headstone, Jerry.
I do, yes, absolutely.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. It's just a beautiful exercise, and it really helps to keep these loved ones in mind, and that they do need the prayers, and we should be praying for our family and our friends, and yeah. So I learned that from a priest who did that.
Oh, awesome. All right, we're going to go to, speaking of Mary, we have Mary in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, listening on Alexa today. Hello, Mary. Thank you for joining us.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Sure.
It's funny you say about the pictures, because my sister was able to find our great-grandfather's headstone on the internet. I think she looked it up where it was, and it showed a picture of it. So she had sent that to me. But I started visiting my grandmother's grave. She was at St. Dominic's in Philadelphia, the cemetery there, and I had gotten sober down the street. So after the AA meetings, I would go to the Adoration Chapel, and then I wanted to find my grandmother's grave. And of course, I didn't realize you can go in the building and they'll tell you where it is. I prayed to St. Anthony and wandered through the cemetery, and I did find her. Because I was really close to my grandmother. She was my sponsor in my confirmation, and I just loved her so. So I would go over there when I was having a hard time and pray to her. And my grandfather's there, but I didn't know him. He had passed before I was born. And then when I moved, I moved to Bucks County, and my father's grave is in Our Lady of Grace Cemetery. So I would go and visit him and my grandmother and my grandfather on my mother's side. My father's buried with them because he died unexpectedly, and my uncle that my dad and mom have the other plots that are there. So I do go visit them. I usually visit my dad, but my grandparents are there too. Even though I didn't know either one of them, but I still pray for them when I go. But it is a nice connection, and I always like to pass by there. It kind of made me happy to buy this home that I picked because I'm so close to my dad. And when I would take my daughter to school, I would pass by there, and now I know where he is too. So it's really nice. It's keeps you close, and I don't know what I'm trying. If I have a problem too, I'll just go there and let him know about it and cry at his grave.
That is so beautiful, Mary, though. You are very blessed with the graces from God to understand this concept of our obligation to pray for not only the living but the dead. So God bless you for doing that. And like you, I only knew one grandparent. It was my maternal grandmother. I didn't know any of the other three grandparents. They all died, I think, in their 50s or something, and we were very young. But you've got a great ministry that you're doing there, and we're so glad you were able to locate all of those graves that you've been praying for. And the way you described, you just like to go over there and just spend time, and it's a peaceful experience for you, and it's obviously helping them, and you can ask them for your prayers. And also, I just want to say congratulations on your sobriety. You've achieved a huge victory there. I know it's a daily walk with a 12-step program, but congratulations to you, and we'll keep you in our prayers. That remains the rest of your life, Mary.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Mary, I brought the prayer book out. If you want to give us any first names of your family members, I added you to the book, so I can add their first names if you want to.
Sure. Thomas, Ashley, Erin, Kate, and then I have, can you put, I'm sorry, Bill, Eileen, and Jeannie?
Sure. And what was your grandmother's name?
Jerry.
Jerry. Okay. Was she a Geraldine?
Yes, she was.
Yeah. Okay. Beautiful.
Geraldine. And my father, Bill, also would be great.
Okay, Bill. So he must be a William, huh? Is he a William?
Yes, William.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. The reason why I know this is because I'm from back east. I'm from New Jersey, so my dad was Bill too, so he was a William. Okay, beautiful. I've got everybody in the book, and you're good to go. And Mary, you're a beautiful soul. Thank you so much for contributing today. Wow, that was a great call.
Every one of these great calls, and we have room for another one right now at 833-288-3986. King is watching on YouTube. Hello, King, along with everybody else. And King says, I walk through the cemetery behind my house often and usually say prayers for people along my walk as I notice their gravestones, even though it is a Protestant seminary. Seminary. I knew I was going to make that mistake once today.
Because you said it out loud, that's why.
Protestant cemetery.
Cemetery.
But
Yeah.
beautiful, King. All souls matter to God, and it's a beautiful practice that you have there. So thank you for doing that.
And the other thing I just wanted to share too, Jerry, this is another practice that I learned. I think it was from a beautiful sister, a nun. But anyway, she was telling me that you should, when you go through the cemetery and you're praying, look for the one grave every time you go that is very unkept. It doesn't have any flowers. The grass is growing over the headstone, because probably they're a forgotten person or their family members have moved away, so they're not there to tend to the grave. And she said maybe tend to the grave a little bit or bring extra flowers and leave. I'm gonna get emotional. Okay, bring extra flowers for that one unkept grave each time, because that's another very a beautiful act of love and charity and grace for that soul, because like Jerry just said, every soul matters to God, and so we have to step in and do our part. So I do that practice as well, and it's, boy, is it emotional, as you can see as I'm getting emotional right now. I don't know if you've ever done that practice. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, well, I can't remember if I have or not. I'm way away, quite a ways away from my family's burial places in Seattle, but I usually like to go when I'm there. But that's beautiful sentiment, Debbie. Thanks for sharing that. Theodore is in Sioux City, Iowa, listening on Siouxland Catholic Radio. Hi, Theodore. Thanks for waiting and your patience. Welcome.
Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for the subject.
Go right ahead.
I'm 66. My parents are both deceased now. My dad, most recently and age 98, he died from COVID, and my mother died about 10 years ago as well at age 89. And I visit them, of course. But I also, I guess, carry on their practice that when we were growing up, they took us to the cemetery every Memorial Day. They cut flowers. They planted flowers. They had us. We prayed at every grave, a few prayers to get the children or to get them to heaven. And one of the graves that I'm still visiting is my grandfather's grave. My dad's dad, who was a Russian immigrant who died 7 years before I was born, and it was a part of my parents' tradition to take us to these graves, and we're still doing it. We're still visiting my grandparents, and actually all four of my grandparents are immigrants, and they're all in the same cemetery, and three of them I knew, but one I still pray for, and he had a difficult life. He died from alcoholism, and every year when we go out, I just keep those, just sort of wondering about about getting to heaven and praying for their souls.
Well, you're doing what's necessary to make sure they're in heaven. And I tell you, when I pass away, I hope that I have as many people as possible praying for me. You don't have to come to visit my gravesite, but just please say a prayer for me, because those prayers are never, ever wasted. If a person is already in heaven, God will apply those prayers to somebody else. So it's just a beautiful thing. Like I said before on the show, it's one of the spiritual works of mercy for the church. Exactly.
A question for you, Theodore. Would you like to? I have the prayer book out. Would you like to give us any of the first names of your parents and grandparents? I have to just say something because I have two sons, and I just want to say how beautiful it is for the son, and you are the son of your parents, and then the grandson of your grandfather. That's beautiful, because you don't see a lot of men caring so much for the cemeteries and those spiritual works of mercy, and really tending to that, because let's face it, when I go to the cemetery, I see mostly women, just to let you know. Occasionally I'll see usually a husband and wife and something like that. I just think it's so beautiful, you being the adult son that you are, that you care so much. That is, I think, very Christ-like. And I just feel this, Theodore, you're going to be blessed for that. I just feel it strongly. So I just wanted to say that for whatever it's worth. But if you want to give us any of the first names, please do so, because I have the book out.
The last few years of my dad's life, my siblings and I would take Dad out, and it was for him to continue to pray for his father. And that was I'm breaking up here, but
yeah.
But my parents are Joe and Mary Ann, and they and I also lost my brother Phil. I'm sorry, my
No,
sister
that's okay.
Teresa. My grandparents are Paul and Anna, and also Joseph and Antonina. And
beautiful.
My parents were great, and they had 27 6 kids, 27 grandchildren, and I think they're on about 60 for great-grandchildren now.
Wow. Well, we can hear it in your heart. You are a precious, precious human being, a precious soul. You're amazing. So you know what? You don't ever have to fight back that emotion. I think it is so beautiful to hear, and you just spread it far and wide so that other people can really learn from your experience and how much love you have for your family. So God bless you.
Well, thanks for the topic today. Very good. Appreciate having the opportunity.
You are very welcome. Thank you for being part of it. And I just wanted to look ahead a little bit. I can't find the date right offhand, but I put a topic on the calendar. Do you cry easily? Do you have the gift of tears? So, Theodore, you may have to call us back. Let me see if I can find that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's hard to do things like this on the fly sometimes.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Have a great day, Theodore. Thanks.
Beautiful. What a beautiful call.
Yeah. I'll find that date while we're going forward here, just in case people are kind of curious now that I mentioned it. But
wow, that hit my heart strong. Okay, we've got more social media coming in. This is a very, very active and popular show, so we're just letting you know up front. We will talk about this again in maybe in a few months. So if you don't get on today, you can always call back. That's why you got to watch all our topics, because it's something new each and every day. Mary in Amarillo, Texas, on St. Valentine Radio. You have been waiting so patiently. Hello, Mary.
Hello. I feel a little guilty with my call after listening to the last one because my question was, is it wrong that I don't go to cemeteries? I don't experience it. After listening to the other callers, I'm thinking I need to just go to the cemetery, but I'm a Protestant and not trained or taught in the praying for the dead, obviously, although I've learned a lot about it from listening to Catholic radio. But I just have never, I'm not very sentimental, and I've never been one to go to the cemetery. And is that bad?
Not at all. Not at all, Mary. Let me share a couple things that may assist in this area, if I can. Are you near a cemetery where some relatives or friends are laid to rest, buried?
Well, not my closest relatives. My parents and cousins who have passed, they're in another state, but I certainly have some close people who are buried nearby in Amarillo.
Sure. Well, what I always share with people, because it is a practice, it is a certain calling to do this and a devotion, but not everybody is comfortable or in the routine of it. They weren't raised with it, and like you said, being a Protestant, because we do as Catholics pray for the souls. Always remember the souls that have gone on before us. So I would just suggest this. What if you just drove by your local cemetery? Just drive by and for just a moment, remember any and all souls that are buried there, and just for that brief second, just make that connection. And when I as I was saying this, Mary, and Jerry just confirmed with a reply, I could feel the Holy Spirit. So I think that is all God is really asking of us, is just to remember that these souls had long lives. They've worked hard to build the kingdom of God, to build up the body of Christ. So many people contributed, so many suffered well, and there was all this wealth of life in that cemetery. So what do you think of that?
I think that's a good idea. As you were saying that, I was also thinking that these people that I cared about who are buried nearby, I certainly remember them regularly without going to the cemetery. But I will try that.
Yeah. And the reason why I say that is my mother always visit the cemeteries, and she taught me at an early age to go and tend to the graves and pray and pay your respects to these wonderful lives that went before us. But we would drive by the cemetery almost every day going to school or because we lived in a small town in northern New Jersey. And my mother would just make a couple comments. Oh, that's where Aunt so-and-so is buried. And she would just connect that they were these beautiful souls that are laid to rest. And I always remember that, and it stuck with me. And I think we can do that same practice without having to dedicate, hours of time to the cemetery. But Mary, you're awesome. I think it's a great question. People ask it all the time about cemeteries.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate
Thank you, Mary, for joining us on the show. 833-288-3986. Got a lot of calls. We're going to try to get to as many as we can. We're going up north to Canada, Ontario, and to be specific, Toronto. Anna is listening on Sirius XM up there. Hi, Anna. Welcome.
Hi. I'm walking right now. I just wanted to let you know that not far from Toronto, maybe about 30 minutes south, there's a art gallery. It's called the Michael Art Gallery. And I'd like to take my walk there. That's what I'm doing right now. And it's a beautiful place with mature trees and carvings everywhere. And not too many people know that there's a small cemetery where the founder and his wife, Robert McMichael, and his wife are buried there, along with the Group of Seven, which is a famous Canadian artist. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. And they're all buried there. And I like to take my walk through the cemetery and then just pray for their souls and thank Mr. McMichael for keeping the grounds open to the public. So that's one story. And then 3 years ago, we took a trip to Ireland, and I visited a few old cemeteries there, which was absolutely beautiful with the Celtic crosses everywhere. I think the oldest was in the 16th century. And I, too, like to bring flowers to unkept graves, especially in the month of November, also. Yeah. So, and it's such a peaceful place. Cemeteries, I don't know, I find that when I go through a cemetery, there's so much peace.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. Couldn't agree more with everything you said. That's amazing. And so the art gallery founders are buried right there in that cemetery that people don't even really probably know about. That is amazing. What do you think about that, Jer?
Well, Anna, as you were talking, and many of the other calls today as well, it just reminded me that, even if we're praying at a cemetery for the souls of those who are buried there, even if they're not anybody that we knew, loved ones, family, anything like that, we are still all related in terms of being members of the human family, but also those who were in Christ when they passed away. So we're praying for our brothers and sisters, even if we did not know them in this life. That was just something that struck me during the course of the show today.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to tell you something else, too, that, Jerry, you just said something. I think this is Holy Spirit really prompted to share this with Anna's call and then what you shared, Jerry. So Anna and Jerry, listen to this and tell me what you think. When I was visiting a cemetery one time, there was a grave site where they had a caption underneath the headstone where it said, she's our hero, and something to the effect, she suffered well. And so I wrote down her name and I took down her dates and I went, thank goodness for online obituaries. I went online and I found out her story. And oh my goodness, this woman, very young age, was put through so much with cancer and the diagnosis, and then she suffered. She left kids behind and everything. And then all of a sudden I started saying, wow, this is a person I never knew, I never interacted with, but I felt so close to. What do you think of that, Anna?
Oh, I think that's wonderful. I never thought of looking at them up. There was one that I did actually when we were in Ireland. It was a priest, and he did so much for this church in I think it was in Kerry County. Yeah, so I did look that one up. But yeah, that's
it's
wonderful.
fascinating.
That's wonderful,
Yeah.
Debbie. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, these are people that have lived on Earth, and like you said, they had their share of suffering, and there's nothing to be afraid of. We're all headed there. We're all in queue.
Right.
We all go out the same door is what I like to say. So thank you, Anna. God bless you. I want to get over to Tammy in Elizabeth, West Virginia. Sorry about that. I swallowed some water wrong. Tammy is in West Virginia listening on St. Paul Radio. Hi, Tammy.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Just fine, yeah.
Okay. I live in Elizabeth, and we have a very old cemetery, and I haven't had I just kind of quit going to cemeteries after a while. But looking back over my life, I grew up in Germany, and the German cemeteries, I don't know if you know this, per grave, they put 4 coffins, and they're set up like parks. You go there and you tend the flowers, you weed it, and Christmas time they put pine needles and candles, and there's a bench and, cobblestone. And in other words, from the time I was young, I was introduced to cemeteries in a positive way. And when me and my son, when he was young, we lived outside of Ravenswood, which was called Silverton. It had an old cemetery, and there was really no place to take him to a park, so we'd go to the cemetery. He started calling it the park. And I would read the headstones, and I would come up with stories about these people. And he was just thrilled to death to go to a cemetery. And if we get the money, there's a famous cemetery in Europe where scientists and writers are buried that people visit. I would love to take him there because I would think he has Asperger's, so he's a bit quirky, and he finds things like that rather interesting. And the last thing, I'm a convert of going on 3 years, and just recently I understand about them thinking of death and the skull. I'm going to go ahead and get they call them sugar skulls. It's a skull, and I'm going to have it tattooed with my son's name on my arm because death shouldn't be something we should fear.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Beautiful, Tammy. We're going to have to end the show on that. Ann in San Antonio wanted to know, do you really believe that the deceased can hear us? And there's a show coming up, a couple of shows later today on EWTN, Call to Communion, Open Line, Catholic Answers Live. If you have the time to call any one of those, they'll be happy to answer that question for you in a very thorough way, and I think you'll go away very satisfied with the response that they give you.
Totally agree with that. And Irene and Eric, both from listening on The Rock in Ohio, we're not going to get to you this time, but we'll revisit this topic again. Tomorrow is the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist. So very important show. We need everyone to show up for that show tomorrow. Jerry?
We do. It's always a very popular show, and we appreciate you so much. Don't forget to submit your topic ideas for You Choose Week. It's April 24th through the 28th, so it's the end of April. Go to take2show.com, click on Submit Today. Let us know what you would like to talk about that week. Until then, have a beautiful and blessed day. St. Joseph, pray for us.
Now here comes a quote from Mother Angelica's perpetual calendar. If something happens that I'm not happy with, I relate it to the will of God.